Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. As our year-end wrap-ups continue, it's that time when Melissa Cole cusses me out. It's filled with love, but it still hurts. It's tradition, and we're big on that around here. So it's the annual writer gathering. The show is one I look forward to. And in addition to Melissa, it's Chris Shepard and Brandon Hernandez to fill us with cheer and beer knowledge. But before we get into it, I hope you'll consider supporting All About Beer. There are a number of ways you can do it, through our Patreon, through our underwriting, and through our advertising. The only way we can continue to bring you original shows like this, or the All About Beer podcast with Em and Don, and articles on our site, is through your support. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. And thanks to this episode's sponsor. Ever wanted to brew your own beer but didn't know where to start? No tubs, no tubes, and no science degree required. Skip the confusion and get straight to the fun with the Pinter. Brew your own fresh beer and impress your friends with craft brews from top breweries like Appalachian Mountain Brewing. It's that easy. Prices have increased, but for our listeners, for this week only, you can grab the Pinter and 2 beer packs. That's 24 pints for just $49. Plus, get free delivery when you go directly to try.pinter.com/DBTB or use code DRINKBEER49. Don't miss out. Grab your Pinter today and start brewing your best beer yet. A reminder, please go visit allaboutbeer.com for original articles, reviews, news, insights, and podcasts. You can listen to shows like Brewer to Brewer and the All About Beer podcast simply by searching All About Beer wherever you listen to shows. You can follow All About Beer on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and Blue Sky at All About Beer. And as always, you can keep up with all of the smoked beer news and releases by checking out This Week in Rauk Beer, by searching the group on Facebook, or by following at TW Rauk Beer on Threads and Instagram. Glassware and apparel is available too on allaboutbeer.com/merch. And a few bucks goes a long way to help fund writers, photographers, creators, and editors by simply going to allaboutbeer.com/support. So this is a fun episode. I get together with friends, writing colleagues, to talk about all that's happened this year and what might be on the horizon. Each brings their own perspective from interviews, travels, and tastings held on the previous 12 months. As in the past, Chris Shepard of Beer Marketers Insights is here, along with writer and author Melissa Cole, and Brandon Hernandez, the editor and founder of San Diego Beer News. It's a lively and engaging conversation with some profanity thrown in, hopefully, for fun. Here's our conversation. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, let's.
Okay, you want to start over?
Yeah. To be fair, it is 6 a.m. on the West Coast. It's 9 a.m. On the East Coast, where Chip and I are right now, and it's what 2 p.m. out by you, Melissa. Okay, so
Yes,
we're covering most of the time zones. We're waiting to see if Matt Kierkegaard wakes up in Australia, where it's midnight right now. He's supposed to be here, and I'm hoping he'll jump on in a minute. But if not, we'll catch up with him another time. Hey, Shep. If there's a way to candy coat this year in beer and then put it into a delicious imperial stout, is there enough candy coating to make the stout delicious, or is this just kind of a bitter year as I really mangle metaphors?
I'm impressed, honestly.
I tried really hard with that one, and I started down the path, and I was like, all right, I'm committed to this, and then it's like, wow, you sound like an ass. So save me, Shep. You're my only hope.
I'm just gonna say no. Like I'm just gonna say no. As in there's not really a sugar coating here. It's the U.S. beer industry is in a tough place, and it goes beyond beer, which we can get into if you want to, but alcohol broadly is soft in the U.S. for any number of reasons. But beer's having a tough time. Craft is having a particularly tough time. Lots of small breweries struggling super hard. It is not universal. That's always the case, right? You're always going to find somebody who's sort of bucking that curve, bucking that trend, having a good year. But those stories are just fewer and farther between.
Yeah.
than they've been in a long time. And it's, you know, in the big beer world, it's sort of the same as it's been with Mexican imports, mostly Constellation Brands, mostly Modelo is doing fine. I mean, for AB, the silver lining is like Mich Ultra and Busch Light are both growing, so who cares about Bud Light and Bud? But for everybody, it's just tough. It's just tough out there.
Yikes. Melissa, what are things looking like from your perch these days?
Same, absolutely same. Yeah, I think there was a deep sense of disappointment after the recent autumn budget that we had over here. Um, the minimal, the absolute bare minimum was done to support beer. The only small ray of sunshine is that there is going to be a consultation on pub market access, which is effectively, for those of those of whom are old enough amongst us, which I unfortunately am, remember the beer orders over here, which meant that large integrated pub and vertically integrated pub and brewing in operations had to allow access to independent breweries. There needs to be something like that. It's just been one horrible mishmash after another. There was a change in the taxation access for what used to be small brewers relief, and that's changed as well, making it harder again. And it's just really, it's not done what the government wanted it to do at the lower end, which is quite entertaining, which is effectively to reduce ABVs by giving a really big tax break on anything below 3.8. But what it has done is it's absolutely kneecapped a lot of the top end of things because the tax on the topper end of alcohol. So going back to your love of sugar candy coated imperial stout, you'll be lucky to find one because of the way that the taxes have been changed. So it's really tough for everybody. Plus the cost of living crisis. Plus, all the global events that we're all very well aware of, and all sorts of other things. It's just been it's incredibly tough out there right now.
Brandon, I know Shep and Melissa have sort of a national view, and I know you pay attention to what's happening on the larger scene. But I'm curious because I think for a long time we've looked to San Diego, like we as industry followers and beer drinkers, we look to San Diego for inspiration, for just the vibrant beer scene that's been around for so long. What's your take on the local level?
Well, here on the local level, you'll see a lot of mirroring of what you see just about everywhere else. So I think we might have a pastry stout, though. So we had 11 brewing companies go out of business this year. And 5 of those were brewing companies that have been around for 10 years or more. One of them was a former very small brewing company of the year from GABF called Rip Current. Another one was Bagby Beer, which is headed by well-known Jeff Bagby of Peatsport and Bagby Beer fame, who now works for Green Cheek, who took over his brewery. In the case of those 11, 6 of them were, 6 of them were taken over by other entities. So there was that. So we've been dealing with this for a little bit, and we're kind of interesting because we have so many brewing companies. I mean, we still have over 200 brewery-owned venues, even with these closures.
Just in the San Diego metro?
This is San Diego County.
Okay.
Which is how we always, if you ever hear San Diego be referred to, they're referring to the entire county. News, a little fun fact there that you can use. But so we did see something interesting this year in that the number of breweries that opened, new breweries, was double the number from last year. So if we're looking at trends, we very well could be seeing something good on that front. It could come down to what a lot of people say about what's going on here in San Diego, and that they're always there's going to be a shifting and a settling out, and then there's going to be this new age of the brewers that will take us into the next, say, decade or so. That could very well be happening, and it's just it could be good in the sense that these breweries are opening in the midst of this economic climate and these challenges for breweries, and might be better equipped because they have business plans that are ready for this environment versus having to, pivot and pivot and pivot over the last 6 or 7 years. So there could be something there. And of course, there's smaller operations that are more geared towards servicing their immediate neighborhood and I would say that a lot of them have more interesting brands. They aren't just we make beer. It's like we celebrate summer in the mid-90s. I mean, that's a real brewery that opened up and it's doing great.
It's called Summer in the Mid-90s is the name of the brewery?
No. No, the brewery is named after the husband wife that opened it up.
Okay.
But you walk in there and it's like walking into several different 90s sitcoms at the same time, most notably Saved by the Bell.
Okay.
And
the Peach Pit.
It's kind of
okay.
Yeah, it's got a certain Peach Pit vibe. I mean, if you look at their logo, it is absolutely just, you can hear the guitar wail and that you're Saved by the Bell. But they're doing great. And the neat thing is it's a young couple. The head brewer has brewed in San Diego for 8 years. He was head brewer at nearby business, and he made great beer, won some awards, and he decided he wanted to go out on his own. So him and his wife pretty much did it by hand all themselves, and they're young and they're attracting a young audience, which is really, really important. And I think that it's cool that they realized they needed to do that, and it's going to be better overall, and that the more people that can bring young people into the fold, the better. The other thing we're seeing down here is that while there have been more openings, we currently have 6 breweries that are for sale. They're either closed or open and still for sale. And, they haven't had anybody take them up on these facilities. So we have this inventory now. This is a new age because it's never been like that here. If somebody was closed a brewery, there are plenty of takers. And there's one that's been on the block for an entire year. And that's just weird. And it's either I think this month they're either going to close up shop just say to heck with it, or yeah, I don't think they're going to continue for into month 13 of their being for sale. But overall, it's still a mixed bag, and there's so many breweries here that I don't think the general citizenship even realizes. They're just like, man, we still have so much beer, and I don't think a lot of people know the breweries are in trouble here just because there's so many of them. So it's kind of a perception thing in San Diego that's a little different than other places. But whenever I go anywhere else, it seems like, their craft is still super exciting to a lot of people. It's really interesting. But here it's kind of become just part of the wallpaper. Okay. It's part of the wallpaper people are really proud of. But yeah, we're still experiencing the troubles everybody else is.
Melissa, did I hear you jumping in?
Yeah, I think that's also kind of reflected in the cask market a bit here as well. Is that people kind of just go, well, cask ale's fine. Cask ale's not fine. Cask ale is anything but fine. There's some, like, for example, I was talking to Redemption for a piece that I did for the Telegraph recently, and they said, actually, do you know what? Their flagship beer, Trinity, which is a 3% pale ale made with 3 different hops, 3 different malts, it is cask ale perfection, has actually just suddenly seen a huge uptick in demand. Partially, it's to do with sort of change in lifestyle, the way that people are going. Some of the OG craft drinkers are now got, much more responsible jobs, families, things like that. They still want to go down the pub, but they want to drink a lower ABV beer. But there's others that have sort of tried to really just like tiny tweaks. Wouldn't even register a blip on American ABVs, but like Marble in Manchester with their flagship pint, they thought, you know what, we'll take advantage of that change, and we'll change it from 3.9 to 3.4. They did loads and loads of test brews and made sure they nailed the flavor profile, and people literally just looked at it and just went, what do you mean that's 3.4 now? I'm just not touching it. And it's a really weird thing that there are things that are absolute touchstones for people, but there's an actual overall total ignorance of the market and how difficult it is. I mean, the amount of money that probably would have put back into Marble's business, which is a tiny business, fantastic, like one of the OGs of craft in the UK, but people literally just get so upset by a 0.5% change that actually their two top selling beers suddenly completely flipped. Their Manchester Bitter completely overtook Pint all of a sudden, and they've had to change it back, and they're making a big song and dance about changing it back. So I think I know it's a bit of a sort of an ephemeral comparison, but I agree that people are actually incredibly ignorant of, and not through their fault, but they're just incredibly ignorant of the day-to-day pressures on all forms of leisure and hospitality business, but brewing in particular.
I want to jump back to the cask thing, right? Because and I've been trying to parse this out a little bit in other conversations, but it feels like for as long as I've been writing about beer, and more than 20 years now, there's always been this, the death of cask is imminent, or cask is in trouble, and it feels like the conversation has changed. It's been the same, but it's ratcheted up just a little bit more in the past year. Um,
Mhm.
is that accurate? And if so, I mean, what is
Yeah, I mean,
is this really like the end times,
yeah.
or
Well,
close to it?
I think the thing is that again, this legislation change that went from small brewers relief through to the new way that things are done. It was actually designed very much in order to stop the squeeze on traditional family brewers in the middle. So craft was doing all right, and big beer is always going to be all right, but in the middle, these family brewers who are predominantly cask brewers are really feeling the squeeze. Now, the idea is that this should actually level the playing field. But again, what happens is that when you change the ABV on Foster's, John Smith, Heineken, Groll, well, not Heineken, Grolsch, Carlsberg, Peroni, anything like that that is stacked high and sold cheap in supermarkets, people don't really care, because they're just grabbing the 12-pack or the 6-pack or whatever. They're just, that's the beer that they drink. That's the beer that women predominantly being the major shoppers will go and buy. If they don't notice it, it's unlikely that the person drinking at the other end is going to notice it specifically, and it just carries on just being, oh, that's what it is. There's only actually one, and all of the noise was that this is actually in order to it's a health thing, right? It's good for you. Actually, what it is it's millions upon millions of pounds worth of savings to send back into the larger brewers' pockets. And actually, all it's done is force that false pricing issue. And cask beer has always had this dreadful, dreadful problem, very much driven by the CAMRA membership, that it should be cheaper than anything else. So they want to save it, but they don't want to pay for it. And cask beer takes a lot more taking care of. And that is the huge problem that you've got with cask beer, is it's gone also, not to mention the fact that pub companies have ripped out training, ripped out cellar skills, ripped out a lot of the kit that you need with stillaging and lines, and don't want to reinvest in replacing lines when they start getting problematic, because you have to replace cask lines more than you have to replace keg lines, and and it is literally just seen as a pain in the butt, because it's a living organism in the cellar, and therefore you have to train people to take care of it. And there's multiple issues, but the main one really is that nobody's like talking about it as our national drink, our premium product. Everybody that I know who comes over here, whether they're beer industry or not, I would say that 85% of people at least want to try cask beer, and probably 50% of them are like, oh my God, this is great. It's not fizzy. It's not freezing. I can taste it. It's great. I love it. It's low ABV. Oh, I can have like 4 of these and we can catch up because we haven't seen each other in God knows how long. And it just, I don't know why the big like bodies and organizations aren't talking about this as such a huge thing. And instead of spending vast amounts of money celebrating a freaking penny off a pint every time the budget comes through, put that money into training. It blows my brains out.
Yeah, jump in.
Yeah, it's interesting you talk about sort of the cost of service, Melissa, when it comes to cask and for everyone in the US, don't expect cask to come on anytime soon. For that reason alone, honestly. I mean, there's always a flavor thing. For whatever reason, Americans want their beer colder and coldest. But uh we're seeing the same thing in the US when it comes to just draft service, when it comes to bars and restaurants sort of choosing what to focus on. And there's been some discussion about how do we get draft back? How do we sort of make the case to these operators that draft is more profitable, that it's a better way to make money on drinks than going to cocktails and taking up those servers' times in a different way. But it's not really happening. And we've seen certainly in the past few years tons of draft lines come off, right? Like
Yeah.
just empty lines, empty lines, empty lines, like really paring back tap lists. And
Wow.
listen, some of that makes sense. During craft's fast growth years, you had to have selection. We're seeing the same thing in off-premise accounts in supermarkets with sort of pulling back space, focusing their assortments. But on the on-premise, it really is this sort of cost thing. And you know, Brandon mentioned this. Melissa, you talked about the cost of living crisis there. It can't really be overstated that it's bigger than beer, it's bigger than alcohol, that sort of economically things are tough for everybody. And that's causing a lot of these squeezes. It's tough on consumers, it's tough on operators, it's tough on producers, it's tough across the board. But I agree with Melissa, this difficulty of getting everybody together to say, why can't we shout about this a little more? There's been certainly discussion in the US. There's a lot more. One of the things that's taken up a huge amount of my time this year is sort of debates over alcohol and health, and the sort of much louder drum beats of all alcohol is bad for you, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's been more talk among the industry across every tier, every sector about how do we sort of push back against that a little bit more, certainly on the policy side. But when it comes to beer specifically, as an industry, sort of speaking with one voice about all the things to be prideful about, all of the wonderful, beautiful things that and beverages that are created here, and the sort of American tradition of brewing and so on and so forth, no one's on the same page about how to accomplish that. And that to me is a real concern. I don't know what changes people's views, because beer is still largely not seen as cool here.
I think it's cost of everything, value of nothing attitude, isn't it? It's that beer both has that every person kind of appeal, so that you can be drinking your PBR, or you can be drinking your fruited sour or your DIPA or whatever. But you like there's a real pushback on the upper threshold of what a beer should cost. So it's like, I'm not paying that for a beer. Yeah, but you'd pay that for a wine that you know nothing about, but because it's got perceived value, you will pay for it.
But that's always been beer's problem, though. I mean, that's always been, even in the heyday of craft. I mean, there's only a small amount of drinkers that were willing to pay like a super premium price for stuff, versus wine. And it was that perception thing. And I think, one of the things that's sort of like, bit craft on the ass in the last year or so, and I've been banging this drum for a while, as you all know, is that a lot of the breweries that opened, maybe not out in San Diego County, but I mean, here in Jersey and some other places, just aren't making decent beer. They're making mediocre beer at best. And when somebody's then trying to charge you $25 for a 4-pack of hop burn juice, there's there's little incentive versus the house red that somebody might serve, or the house white, where it's like, okay, yeah, no, I guess this is pretty fine. The expectations are, they're not equal between the two.
I think there's a lot of arrogance there still as well, that if you build it, they will come. And I've seen
those days are dead in the US. Yeah,
well, they're dead here as well. But there's a real lack of empathy for looking. I mean, this is a this is a societal issue, but there's a massive lack of empathy for actually taking a look at your local market and saying, hey, do you know what we should make sure that we do is and I think I've spoken about this here before anyway, but there's a huge old people's home across the road. Why don't we make sure that we're doing early bird specials, or that we're doing something like low ABV that they can come over and enjoy at 2:00 in the afternoon, because they don't have to be at work. Or that actually, this whole idea, I know that there's always a huge debate about it, but not being clear on whether, for example, you're dog friendly or whether you're family friendly, or so on and so forth. And I think all of these things is that it doesn't take an awful lot to look outside your own bubble, and beer is still absolutely failing to do that in so many ways. And we've had, for the first time this year, a queer woman of colour who's just won the British Guild of Beer Writers Beer Writer of the Year. So happy for Ruveny, absolutely brilliant. Then you look at all the people who own or work in craft beer in the UK, and just go, yeah, that's kind of not the representation, though, is it? And there's still this complete failure to engage with whole swathes of the community, when actually it's because it's just some white dude at the top, and it's beer is doing a lot of this to itself.
Brandon, I want to jump back to you for a second on one of the things Melissa was talking about looking at the marketplace as well. When you've seen some of the breweries open versus some of the ones that have closed, are people paying attention to the market and how to differentiate themselves, or, stand out better with staff training or education, or like the ones that are coming on now, in your opinion, are they doing it right, or are they just trying to be a Xerox of what's already there?
Well, it's not a monolith, so I can't really speak that, but if I was to speak in one way and say overall, no. I wish they were. And for a long time. So just to give you a little background on myself, for people who don't know, I've been in marketing for 30 years. That's where my background is. And so, of course, I look at the beer industry in a way that's different than, say, somebody who's making the beer or running the tasting room. Well, I should be running the tasting room, but I've always marveled at how little marketing there is. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that marketing's always been too expensive to really give much thought to for most small breweries. But also the fact that the people who open the breweries, they're typically engineering-minded folks who are looking to do something they're passionate about. And even if they have a handle on business, it's typically more about math, the math aspect of it. I marvel at the fact, even now especially now in these challenging times, that people in the industry, by and large, see marketing as a luxury, going the extra mile, and not a necessity for the brewery, when truly it's never been more important than it is now. And that's in all regards that go even beyond the basic brand. But you're talking about things like training staff. I will say in San Diego, the people who staff our tasting rooms are pretty darn exceptional. If you come to a brewery in San Diego, you're bound to have an experience that is not only engaging, but if you wish, like if you want to go down that route, or if you were giving off some signals that maybe you need a little assistance, people around here know their beer. And customer service. That's the best aspect of customer service that a San Diego brewery typically provides, is they can tell you about all the beers on the board. They understand the difference between different styles, and they can get you into it and get people excited. And I think that's one of the reasons why, even with things the way they are, we're still bringing new people into the fold and keeping people engaged. The fan base here really appreciates that, and they definitely gravitate towards tasting rooms where they get that experience. So I don't think I think that we excel there, but honestly, with so many breweries, it's so important to stand out, and a lot of breweries just don't. And I guess that has a lot to do with the fact that, again, just marketing is not a priority for a lot of people. They'll like stick their name on a building and there you go, or they'll stick a difficult to pronounce name or something that is just completely esoteric, and then wonder why people can't pronounce their name and don't show up. Yeah. And
it's the
beer is
number
good.
one requirement to be on this show as a new brewer is I need to be able to pronounce your brewery name without embarrassing myself. And
Yeah,
it's increasingly hard.
Well, one thing I did want to comment on
Yeah.
before I cede my time to Mr. Christopher Shepard,
God.
we're going back to, I wanted to go back to what you guys were talking about with, you mentioned the $25 4-pack. The math on beer doesn't make sense anymore.
Doesn't math?
The math doesn't math. And it's really, I don't know, it's troubling to me, because I remember when, I'm old. I remember a lot of things, but I would have never thought we'd see $25 4-packs of 16-ounce cans. But I think we can all agree, even the people selling that beer, that, damn, that's more expensive than this should ever be. And it's only going to get to be more expensive here real soon. The math component and the perceived value, the sticker shock, the value proposition at market, it's just, I don't know how beer is going to overcome that. And I know that, and it is all driven by things like the raw materials for making the beer, the raw materials for packaging the beer being so expensive, and labor. I mean, here our
California with your minimum wage. Yeah.
I mean, it's the minimum wage has gotten high enough that the voters voted down another increase. I mean, geez, I would have never thought I'd see that happen, but it all getting passed on to the consumer. I think people are starting to get wise to the fact, like, man, at some point I'm just bearing the brunt of all of this. And so, and with tariffs and things like that, it's only going to get more expensive to get some of these things, especially aluminum and
wheat and
yeah. So I just know that these prices are going to jump even more. And me, as a not beer writer, but a consumer, I'm concerned because I love drinking beer and I like purchasing it, but man, it's getting expensive. I'm going to have to get a second job.
$25 for the 4-pack. Chris, are we headed into 2025 as the year of the nip bottles?
What
The pony bottle, the nip bottles.
What share? No. I know what you're talking about. What share do the nip bottles have to reach for us to be able to say that it's the year of the nip bottle? I mean, if they get to 0.1, can we say yes? Or
sure.
Yes.
Then maybe.
Okay.
Then maybe. But I don't know that.
Okay. For those who don't know, New Belgium is planning on putting the skeleton IPA. Yeah. Well, I'm still going to call them nip bottle. Like, it's 7 ounce. Yeah.
So yeah.
7.5. Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking of not just a bottle but a can, then yeah, I think we
Absolutely,
are looking at sort of a much more real. And I thank you for bringing up New Belgium, because I actually wanted to go there. I wanted to pull on Brandon's marketing thread.
Okay.
And it comes back to cost. Let's be real. People pay for things that they see value in, and marketing has a way of communicating to consumers that a brand has value. Marketing has been derided among small brewers, or I mean, for a while it was derided. Now it is, I think, as Brandon says, is correctly, it sort of feels like a luxury. It feels sort of out of reach. It feels like something that sort of can't really be done.
Which is not true, but yeah.
Correct. I think, I have seen a lot more sort of larger players in craft, or mid-sized players in craft, trying to sort of figure that out, and sort of make room for that math, I'll say. But I wanted to bring up, 2024 is probably going to be the third year in a row, maybe even fourth. I sort of pulled up my spreadsheets, but didn't sort of parse the numbers perfectly, where the two fastest growing players in US craft will be New Belgium and Athletic. In terms of barrels gained, it's likely to be the third year in a row. Now, Sierra is going to give a little bit of a run for New Belgium's money this year, because New Belgium's beer has slowed down a bunch. But
it's celebration season, which always just pads the bottom line.
You had to do it, didn't you, John?
I had to do it. I'm going to swing at every low fruit.
He was just waiting for Sierra Nevada to be mentioned. The minute I heard it.
I've been like the cartoon wolf, sitting here with the fork and knife in each hand, just eagerly waiting for somebody to serve it up.
Oh, sorry to do that to you, Melissa. Sorry to put that.
You want to get it out of your system now, Melissa?
Hang on a minute. No. The good news is that I am literally looking at the Sierra Nevada shop right now, and I'm putting some stuff in the cart because I can get some this year. Yay!
See, again, padding the bottom line. Anyway, Shep, I interrupted you. Sorry.
No, it's cool. It's cool. It has to happen. So, and when this is not news to anybody that New Belgium and Athletic are two of the fastest growing craft companies, or the fastest growing craft companies for a while now. The story that's been told most about that phenomenon is the sort of bifurcation aspect of it, which, New Belgium mostly growing with high ABV IPAs. We'll use that. They use those three letters, mostly in large containers in convenience stores, and Athletic, all non-alcoholic. So people have talked about the sort of strength spectrum. It's either, very high ABV or it's no ABV. There's another part of the story, and it's marketing. In the lead up to the sort of launch of Voodoo Ranger and in the early years of Voodoo Ranger, the leadership of that company talked very specifically about the need to literally spend more on marketing, to divert more of the funds towards marketing, to look more like a spirits company. The largest spirits companies in the world spend upwards of 20% of revenue on marketing, which is sort of an unheard of number in beer generally. And certainly for small brewers, the idea of spending, 2 out of every $10 that comes in the door on marketing is sort of unthinkable for a lot of companies. But that's what the spirits companies do. And New Belgium was very, very much saw that as the target, as the thing to try to sort of go after and achieve. I don't think they're there in terms of that specific metric, but it's certainly more than most other companies. And then on Athletic, have we seen a company so young spend so much on getting its name out there and being in front of people? Just like it is sort of relentless, the amount of press there is about this company. And in terms of just the talk factor, and just sort of getting themselves out there again, every single opportunity they can, and similarly spend a bunch on doing that.
Say again, Melissa.
They're taking a swing at the UK market as well.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, I was poorly, so I couldn't attend. But they did a big event at Arsenal Football Club a couple of weeks ago to celebrate sponsorship there. And I mean, I think very cleverly what they did was Heineken have been genius at opening the door over here to get around marketing of alcohol. So they've done really clever things like the two big soap operas in the UK, or two of the biggest soap operas in the UK of Coronation Street and Emmondale. Both have a pub central to the storylines, and they've got the Heineken non-alc on the bars in both of those. on TV, and also doing. I think didn't they just sponsor didn't they just sponsor the F1 in Vegas as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And that was clearly a real big thing for them as well. And I think Athletic have seen it and just gone, because there's been for a long time you're not allowed to advertise during football matches and things like that. So I think they've really smartly spotted what the door that Heineken have pushed open, and they've come right smartly charging behind it. I think also it's fairly obvious that some of the bigger brands that have been going over here for a while are looking for an exit strategy, and a few other bits and pieces. So I think actually Athletic have got a really strong a strong proposition, because there's only one other brand over here that really actually has a range of actual different beers. And I think that's actually been the failure of a lot of other people, is that they've tacked it on as an after this, we now need a non-alc, instead of actually saying what we need to do is we need to develop a rainbow of them and say, right, we need everything from this to this in order to actually make this a genuine part of our portfolio, other than just, you can try that one. Because I do notice this, it's kind of anecdotal, but again, that piece I was talking about earlier, when I was speaking to publicans, one of the things that they notice the most about people who are drinking non-alcs is that they don't like to stick to the same one. So they like to have a choice.
That's really interesting.
That's fascinating, actually. Yeah.
I agree.
And I actually agree with that. Like when I'm drinking non-alcs at home, the thing is that it's really easy to go, kind of, as brilliant as they are, and as brilliant and as far as they've come, and I've sort of spent a lot of time trying to figure out whether this is a mindset issue or whether it's actually a product issue. Is that really they do just get a bit sweet after a while. There's no two ways about it. You can't get around that. And so actually changing up the style. So I have a tendency to start with a couple of lagers, and then I'll move on to a pale ale, and then I'll generally end up with a stout. But in reality, I either go and buy a bunch of loads of them, or I actually just order a mixed case from one. And I think that is one of the things that people haven't really grasped properly, is that when they're talking to people about why do they maybe start the night and then move on and move away from their products, or why are you why are you only having one and then going, do you know what, I'll drink water for a little bit, which is bad for the on-trade. So you go into restaurants and bars, you're like, oh yeah, I'll have a couple of non-alcs, but then no, I'm good now, thank you, because they've only got one non-alc beer available. And I think the real problem that they're going to have now is that actually there are some wines coming out over here. I don't know what it's like over there, but I got sent a couple of bottles by a company called Wednesday's Domain, and I was kind of a bit meh about a couple of them. But then I tried the sparkling rosé, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing! Like, genuinely blew me away. And I thought, I'd much rather buy a bottle of that than I would sort of picking my way through, or having a few like non-alc beers, and maybe the range isn't there, and then just going, I'll have a soft drink now, and then just basically going home feeling like I've drunk 6 tons of sugar. I think that there's a real issue with ranging in non-alcoholic beers.
And we'll get back to this conversation in just a moment. But first, thanks to this episode's sponsor, Pinter. Have you ever wanted to brew your own beer but didn't know where to start? No tubs, no tubes, and no science degree required. Skip the confusion and get straight to the fun with the Pinter. Brew your own fresh beer and impress your friends with craft brews from top breweries like Appalachian Mountain Brewing. It's that easy. Prices have increased, but for our listeners, for this week only, you can grab the Pinter and 2 beer packs, that's 24 pints, for just $49. Plus, get free delivery when you go directly to try.pinter.com/DBTB or use the code DRINKBEER49. Don't miss out. Grab your pinter today and start brewing your best beer yet.
Oh, hey, I've got some breaking news.
Oh, yeah?
It is going to be a great new year for you if you play your cards right, Mr. John Holl, because on February 8th at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City, New Jersey, Cool and the Gang, and they play what?
Jersey City's own. Jersey City, New Jersey's own Cool and the Gang.
Celebration. See, I'm going to work it back in.
Good God.
Look, you took the scenic route to get us there, but I appreciate it.
Oh my God.
It's a
I like that you've been
celebration.
like furiously Googling where Cool and the Gang is still playing. And
Hey, I didn't have to furiously Google anything. It almost attacked me from my computer.
Oh my
From your-
It wanted
from
to be
your-
here.
from
I
your
think
search
that-
history. Yeah, your targeted ads.
I
What's
just figured
playing
there
in
was
February in Atlantic City?
my computer
Um,
doesn't exactly passively listen, so it probably served it up on an ad server for me.
Brilliant. Excellent. That was the largest shoehorning of a joke into a conversation I've seen in a very long time. Now, if I
Well,
knew
I don't tell dad
actually
jokes. I'm a grandfather, so I'm really good at bad comedy.
if only they could get themselves sponsored by Sierra Nevada and all John's Christmases will have come at once.
Oh man, that'd be fun.
And I'd be looking at flights for that so we could go together.
Yes, let's crash at the house. So one of the things that was sort of interesting to me was what Shep was talking about earlier of just athletics' big push, New Belgium's big push on marketing, and sort of going back to, and Brandon, I want to put your marketing hat back on because I mean we've talked about this before on the show, but previously you worked at Stone, where notoriously it was we don't do ad buys, we don't do anything to get the word, like the beer speaks for itself, and there's always a media push, but like not really a marketing push.
Sure.
As I remember. And then, I mean, Stone was unstoppable for quite a while, and now Melissa just reported over in the UK a couple of weeks ago, that they've pulled out of international exports. It seems like things have sort of changed for that brand quite a bit. I mean, new ownership and everything as well. But when I think of San Diego County, I'm of that age where I still think of Stone. What's the state of the brewery in your hometown and your area these days? Do people still think of it in the way that we all used to?
I think a certain number of people of a certain age do. People who came up, and that was kind of the brewery in San Diego, as you're saying, and they played such an important role in just turning the focus of beer drinkers, and not even in this nation but beyond, to San Diego. I don't think that San Diego beer would be what it was without Stone and them just, if nothing else, showing people what could be done. Just going beyond the basics. Like look at what you could become, in a certain era. It all worked out. To be honest, I think we're far enough out of the old regime that I can be honest and say that marketing was always a huge focus at Stone. I mean, I worked in a marketing department of 20 people for a brewery. That's extraordinary. We just didn't. I think the whole thing was they just didn't want to pay for marketing and advertising. And so even with all those resources, we didn't pay for ads. We didn't pay for anything. We tried to do it organically and grassroots and all of that. And we had tons of talented people who could execute that, especially online. So that was great. But I always felt like that whole we don't pay for advertising thing. I'm like, well, yeah, because we don't want to pay for advertising. There's no line item for that, and it would be way too expensive. Even for a company that size, it would be way too expensive, which is why I feel like it's tarnished most people's view of ads and marketing for the entire industry. But as far as getting back to where are they now, a lot of people kind of have written them off, and I think it's kind of sad to see, because what was really cool about the whole Sapporo thing is that they kept everybody on, especially in production. And those are the people that have been making the beers for years and years and years. And I believe that people within the industry haven't written them off necessarily, although there are some because they know these personalities. But it's honestly, I don't see that much savvy with most beer consumers, even here in San Diego, as far as that. I mean, you get down to like the 2% of people in San Diego who know anything about beer other than drinking it. And I think that's fine. Like, I don't know who makes car parts. I just go buy them when I need them.
Yeah.
And I don't need to know about the executive structure or anything like that, or it's immaterial, because even if I knew, it wouldn't matter. But with beer, some people do want to know that, but largely they don't. And so a lot of people just see Stone as what it's always been. They don't even know about Sapporo. As far as what's going on over there, I think it's great that they're still seem to be making Stone beer. Well, okay, well, they have been up to this point, just kind of making Stone beer seasonals, anniversary release, things like that. It seems like nobody at Sapporo is getting in the way of that, because their big focus is just in Sapporo brewed over there. I do think that, as I understand it, there's going to be some fine tuning of the portfolio and things like that, and I think it's inevitable at times like this to be doing that anyway, and just for the long-term health of that portion of the company. But I think for the most part, most people, regular folks, aren't mad at Stone. Some people want to hold a grudge. I don't understand why. They were probably drinking Sapporo at the sushi restaurant before this ever happened. So get over it.
Melissa, with the news that Stone was pulling out of your market, you broke it, but was it an oh my gosh, or was it a shrug?
There was some people who were genuinely sad. Like, really, like my social media streams were all flooded with no, oh my god, that's so awful, da. And then sort of a bit more slowly after that, people going, oh yeah, but you can't really get you can't really get this anymore, and you can't really get that anymore, and you can't. I guess, to be honest, everybody near me brews this, that, and the other anyway. So kind of. I mean, it's sad because it's Stone and they're OGs, and actually, I remember my first Arrogant Bastard and things like that. And I think the problem's been, a lot of it is I think the pullout in Berlin really. I think European drinkers were very, very aware of that, and I think because it went to BrewDog, I think that reflected on Stone, especially very shortly afterwards. I think I got to be honest, I can't quite remember the timeline, but it wasn't that long afterwards that lots of things started to break about BrewDog, and I think a lot of people, excuse me, felt a little bit less of Stone as a result. And that it was, I mean, despite the fact that BrewDog's always been basically copying Stone.
That was always the shtick. Yeah,
exactly. It was nothing particularly original, and so it feels a bit. I think maybe Europe had a little bit of like the hardcore beer drinkers in Europe had a little bit of a grudge against Stone as a result of that, as opposed to actually probably even more so than the Sapporo sale. But I think that, the interesting thing as well in the UK is that SIBA, the Society of Independent Brewers, has done some research recently that shows that 75% of people who are surveyed believe that consumers are being misled when purchasing beer from once independent craft breweries like Beavertown, Camden, Fuller's, that are now owned by Heineken, Budvar and Asahi respectively. And it was actually interesting that that's just people, and when it goes to beer drinkers, it jumps to 81%. So they launched an indie beer campaign, which I think if they can really make that work, I genuinely think it will work for independent brewers. I think that genuinely that particularly in the UK, I think it's been shown by, stupid crap like Brexit, but also I think, we do have that sort of sense of national pride about our own homegrown stuff. And a lot of it is actually, oh, I just assumed that was Beavertown because Beavertown's always been Beavertown. It's cool. I see it everywhere. And some people know the joke as to why it's called Beavertown. And
I mean, I was going to say this is a family show, even though it's not. I don't know the joke.
Oh, it's one of those. Well, it's one of those things that as Americans, I'm sure you'll appreciate that we pronounce things weirdly over here. So what looks like the Vale de Belvoir, which is a part of London, a very small part of London where Beavertown started, Belvoir is actually pronounced Beaver.
Oh, okay.
So it isn't. But obviously there's the double entendre. But yeah, no, it's one of those ones where you sort of, as an English person, you kind of shrug it off a little bit.
Yeah, I was expecting something funnier, but yeah, that's fine.
Well,
my celebration joke was funnier than that.
Yeah, this is true. But it doesn't necessarily sort of, nobody really massively thinks about that. But I think it's really interesting, and if SIBA and Cameron together can absolutely get this into people's consciousness, again, going back to our marketing and advertising and promotions and really pushing it and making sure that it's a thing, I genuinely think that will be very good for the industry, but it's all going to be about execution. And at the moment, it's feeling a little under executed. I hope that there's really big plans for it. Okay.
Hey, Shep, you still there?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to bring up something that Melissa sort of talked about, of some of the copying that BrewDog was doing with Stone back in the day. And I think that there was a lot of that follow the leader mentality. When you look at the two growth segments right now in the US of the high ABV skeleton IPA and the athletic NA, do you see that the larger industry is looking to that and saying, let me try to get a piece of that? Like, are we just repeating things from the past, or is there innovation that you're seeing of people trying to carve their own path, knowing that those two avenues are probably largely blocked off?
Oh dear. To be clear, the high, large cans of high ABV IPA, it was itself sort of was innovative in craft to an extent. I mean, small breweries had been sort of pushing up ABVs of specifically hazy IPAs in 16-ounce cans for a while at sort of very local levels. The insight, I want to call it, more than innovation, for New Belgium and Voodoo Ranger was looking at FMBs, was looking at the flavored malt beverage segment.
Sure.
Was looking
and also
at,
not speaking to craft consumers.
Yeah, exactly. Was saying, wait a second, there's a whole set of consumers who are who are buying these beverages mostly at convenience stores that are sold in large cans, that are brightly colored, that are generally relatively sweet or very sweet, and that are generally pretty high ABV. Like there was, I put it in print a couple of years ago that it was an FMB-ification of craft, and that was the real insight there. And they've made hay off of it. And there have been lots of people who have followed, and there have been lots of craft companies that have tried to figure out, well, how do I make this a little bit more craft? Like, how do I stay a little bit, closer into, from a flavor perspective? But that's what's been going on there. And now listen, Voodoo Ranger's growth this year is dominated by its literal FMBs, dominated by a hard charged tea.
Yeah.
They're just literally playing in that space now, but they sort of, made their way there. It's hard to ask. This about me. Your listeners might not, but my background is in theater and art making and dance, and I'm a hardcore postmodernist, and so nothing is new under the sun. Everything is a remix of things that have been seen before.
Our town on Broadway.
Yeah. And so I see that in this space as well. I see that in the industry as well. We're all just sort of taking little bits, and everything is a little bit of a pastiche, and nothing is really, really new, or very few things are, at least. And if they are, they're probably very, very small and super niche. And so, I don't know. I think non-alc has been around for a long time. I think what some of the leaders in this space are bringing to it in terms of how they're talking about it and the way they're going about it is new. And listen, that's driven by the technology, right? Like, what's really new is going on sort of before the brewery level, right? It's with technology producers, it is with hop producers and grain producers. It is sort of folks being challenged by, how do I create a new flavor here? How do I create a process that allows non-alc beer to be produced that preserves flavor in different ways? Like, those to me feel like the real innovations.
I like that.
But from abroad, it's all copycatism. Like, it's all, and plenty of folks in the industry make jokes about this. Like, you have one success and you're going to have 3,000 people on your heels instantaneously. And I think that's a little bit of a shame. I see that sort of down the supply chain. We see that we sort of hear that from wholesalers, and that it's sort of an old perspective too, where it's like, when there were very few players, it's like, and those players were aligned with different wholesaler networks. You had one company come out with ice beer, light beer, whatever that actual innovation was. The other network had to be like, no, you need to give me my version of that because I don't have access to that and I need to compete against that. And I think we still sort of see a holdover of that, where they sort of look at what else is working for other people and it's like, no, I need to play there. And so there's this sort of, it pushes a lot of brewers, certainly of scale. If you're a craft brewer playing at scale in any way, I hear a lot about sort of being pressured into, well, I'm being told I have to put this in a 19.2 ounce can, and if I don't, then I'm just going to lose, and I need to get these wholesalers' attention to sort of pay attention to my brand, so I do it. And I don't know that that's the healthiest. I don't know that that's the healthiest place to be, because once that market gets crowded, it's done, it's over. It creates sort of faster cycles to sort of move through as spaces quickly get sort of overcrowded from frankly copycat products and brands.
I've got a good question for you guys, actually. So how's hop water doing over there?
Not as good as I'd like.
Yeah, I could see it doing better, but it's a solid segment of non-alc and non-alc craft. It's not huge. I think there's a little bit of a price thing to it, and there's a little bit of it's still sort of siloed with beer. It's still sort of counted with beer.
Mm-hmm.
There are some brands that have tried to sort of push through, but in terms of where it is sold and how it is sold, it's still largely, in with the beer model. For it to really blow through the water, to sort of blow through the barrier there, it's sort of got to get out in a little bit bigger way, and sort of start being shelved with the rest of the non-alcs, with the rest of the seltzers, you know what I mean? But the problem with that is all that space is paid for in a supermarket. And if it's alcohol producers, if it is a hop water that is produced by a brewer, they're not able to make those payments. That's illegal. It sort of depends on the state. It gets a little sort of touchy there, but it becomes a little bit more of a challenge to put that in other places in the store because of trade practice laws.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, never thought I would say trade practice law on this podcast, but here I am.
There we are.
All right. So
cover a multitude of things.
being mindful of everybody's time, and Brandon's got to go back to bed, and it's almost happy hour for Melissa. And Shep and I still have full work days ahead of us. And Matt is peacefully asleep right now, and we missed you, Matt, and we'll get you back next year.
I think he had an existential crisis, and that's probably why he's not here.
I mean, in fact, I completely missed one year through because I was asleep through COVID. So let's just hope that he's not poorly.
Yeah, no, that's but so we've sort of talked about some of the copycats, but I'm curious from each of you about just one brewery that you've come across that you think is doing it right and doing it their own way, that in 2025, if folks can have the chance to go and visit them and see a brewery that you think is worthy of, you know, their dollars and their time. Melissa, what's that brewery for you?
Do you know what? There's going to be a lot of people who are probably going to go, well, that's a very trite answer. Of course, that's an easy one. But for two reasons, really. It's the Colonel in London, because their beers are absolutely fantastic. But also, there's somewhere that's not serving pizza. And I couldn't be happier about that. They've got kind of an izakaya thing going on. And I just, if I could...
Kind of a what thing going on? I'm sorry.
Izakaya.
Oh, okay.
The Japanese drinking food.
Yeah.
And if I could just beg of breweries and brewery taps up and down the UK, in fact the world, stop serving pizza. Okay, pizza and beer is it's just too much. You fill up within like 3 seconds and it's done. And I'm bored. Get better food offerings. Even if it was like an even better array of bagged snacks, some cheese and charcuterie. Please get better. Please get more interesting with your food offers, because at the end of the day, that also keeps people in and you get better margins.
Okay. Brandon, what's happening in I was going to say San Diego County, but you travel a lot. What's a brewery that you think is doing it right that people should go and visit?
It's really tough because I'm going to name some place in San Diego. I hate to only name one, but I think that for all the hype it gets, it's deserved, because Pure Project Brewing here does an exceptional job of offering beers that are unique. You know, I just wrote an article for the local paper, hasn't published yet, but it's about kind of like the lack of stylistic options in San Diego County, because most people are so hyper focused on hoppy ales and, you know, crushable lagers, that it's hard to find anything else. And Pure Project makes those beers, but they also make other kinds of beers. They make adjunct beers. They can even put a saison on, a farmhouse ale on, and it will sell. They're still barrel aging things. They're keeping people really interested, and they have lovely spaces. They have 5 of them, and they're all throughout the county. So it's not like they're bunched up anywhere. You can be almost anywhere in San Diego and be close enough to get to one of these spots. And they're all stylish. They're nice. They have good staff. They have, like I said, a variety of beers that are interesting. They put on nice events, and they just hit it from all different angles and try to leave no stone unturned where it comes to what they can offer and how they can stand out. They're 1% for the Planet company, so there's that. They team up with local, eco-friendly charities and head up initiatives and cleanups. And I think there's so much to be said for that, that I really appreciate what they're doing, and think that if you're coming to San Diego and you want to see a really class act, that's the way to go. They've got so much to offer, and not the least of which is beer.
I like that. Chip, do you have one?
No. This is a very difficult question for me to answer. Thank you for letting me go last. I'm gonna sort of tweak this question and answer. I do, but I have more than one, but I'm gonna move this and tell folks to maybe give it a little bit. But I was reflecting on the beer experiences that I've had in the past year, and what are the ones that sort of stick out to me that were favorites. And I was able to get back to Asheville in August, a couple months before the storms.
Yeah.
And it had been a few years since I was in town. And, everyone's, oh, beer's so bad and craft is so hard. And I got to Asheville, and you know what? Asheville was still Asheville. And I know that Asheville has changed a lot since I have been there just a few months ago. But you know what? The people there and the breweries there still care a lot, and lots of them still do a fabulous job. I was there, I was in town for a Sierra Nevada event, and that brewery is still spectacular. And every beer they make, things that you can only get there and things that you can get nationally are still lovely there. I love getting up to Highland Brewing in Asheville,
Yeah.
the oldest brewery in town. Leah and Brock and the whole team there are wonderful, and they still do their thing, and have been, both of those companies and many others hugely instrumental in the recovery efforts of Asheville. But you know what? You're still able to see beer in so many different forms and respected so across the board, up and down the supply chain, from the brewers through the wholesalers and the retailers. Just so many wonderful restaurants and accounts that just love beer and treat beer beautifully there. And so like, if you're looking for something to do, you know what? Let's all try to get to Asheville, and remember why it became such a special place to begin with. And goodness knows they need it right now. So I think that's how I'm going to answer that question, if that's okay with you, John.
I love it. Thank you. That's and I couldn't agree more. That's top on my list for the new year, to get down there, and just even some of the surrounding areas as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
When Wambles has his new brewery that opened up in Brevard nearby, and I mean, it's the place to go and visit. Hey, thanks to you three. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for getting up early or staying up late, or pushing off meetings. Thanks. This is always fun, and I'm grateful for your friendships and for your time, and for the time that we can all spend together. So have a great holiday. Have a great new year, and let's try to meet up for pints at some point.
That sounds like an absolute delight, and fuck you very much.
Well, that's great. I was gonna say, I love you guys. This has really been special. And
I've
you know what,
only
Melissa? Fuck you very much too. Okay?
Podcast.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't directed at you, although maybe the Cool in the Gang joke. It's now.
No,
yeah,
no. It's definitely it's always aimed at you, John.
I know. I can take it, and if it didn't happen, I'd be disappointed. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Happy Christmas. Happy New Year.
As I mentioned a few weeks back, we're now 5 years into the show, and I want to make sure that you're getting the most out of it. How do we make the show better? What do you want? Who do you want to hear? Do you have questions, comments, guest suggestions? It's very easy. All you have to do is email me. It's John Holl, that's JOHNHOLL, at allaboutbeer.com. And I will do my best to respond to every email. And thanks to everybody who has already sent theirs. The only way we can keep doing this show, all of our other shows, and to pay writers for original articles is with your help. Please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. A reminder, go visit allaboutbeer.com. You can check out the podcast page when you're there, or our merch page. You can read great new content, as well as our archives, which go all the way back to 1979. Follow All About Beer on social media. And before we go, here is a word from this week's sponsor. Ever wanted to brew your own beer but didn't know where to start? No tubs, no tubes, and no science degree required. Skip the confusion and get straight to the fun with the Pinter. Brew your own fresh beer and impress your friends with craft brews from top breweries like Appalachian Mountain Brewing. It's that easy. Prices have increased, but for our listeners, for this week only, you can grab the Pinter and 2 beer packs. That's 24 pints for just $49. Plus, get free delivery when you go directly to try.pinter.com/DBTB or use code DRINKBEER49. Don't miss out. Grab your Pinter today and start brewing your best beer yet. Steal This Beer has new episodes every Monday. The BYO Nano podcast comes out on the 15th of every month. And check out probrewer.com each week for original articles from the All About Beer team. As for this show, Nate Schweber does our music, Jeff Quinn designed our logo, and I'm John Holl. New episodes release every Wednesday, and that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.